Senator Bob Menendez spoke before reporters this morning where he was defiant against his second indictment on federal bribery charges.
I recognize this will be the biggest fight yet, but as I have stated throughout this whole process, I firmly believe that when all the facts are presented, not only will I be exonerated, but I still will be the New Jersey's senior senator.
On the subject of thousands of dollars in cash found in his home, Menendez said this.
Third, for 30 years, I have withdrawn thousands of dollars in cash from my personal savings account, which I have kept for emergencies and because of the history of my family facing confiscation in Cuba. Now, this may seem old-fashioned, but these were monies drawn from my personal savings account based on the income that I have lawfully derived over those 30 years.
When it came to those gold bars they found in his apartment, though, Menendez had less to say.
Very much.
Prosecutors have accused the Democratic senator from New Jersey of accepting bribes, including luxury gifts, a Mercedes-Benz, aforementioned gold bars, and $500,000 in cash in exchange for his power and influence. A growing number of lawmakers in Congress are calling for Menendez to step down. Here's Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on CBS's Face the Nation on Sunday. Let's watch.
I do believe that it is in the best interests for Senator Menendez to resign in this moment. As you mentioned, consistency matters. It shouldn't matter whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. The details in this indictment are extremely serious. They involve the nature of not just his, but all of our seats in Congress. And while, you know, as a Latina, there are absolutely ways in which there is systemic bias, but I think what is here in this indictment is quite clear.
Meanwhile, Senate Democratic Whip Dick Durbin refrained from going as far as to call for Menendez's resignation. Let's take a look.
These are, in fact, indictments that have to be proven. Under the rule of law, the person who is accused is entitled to the presumption of innocence, and it's the responsibility of the government to prove that case. I said that about Donald Trump. Let's say the same thing about Bob Menendez. But the bottom line is the Senate Democratic Caucus has a hard and fast rule. When indicted, you lose your position in leadership or chairmanship of a committee, and that is what has happened with Senator Menendez.
Menendez has been stripped of committee chair assignments, but he is refusing to step down, telling reporters this morning he will continue his run for re-election. Now, Shermichael, I saw you chuckling there a little bit as we, heard the whole, he's not proven in court, so it's premature.
Dick Durbin, I mean, come on. His comments about former President Trump.
But Shermichael, isn't that, consistent with the argument you were making about Russell Brand, that until these...
Yeah, it's consistent for Shermichael, but it's not consistent for Dick Durbin, who's had the exact opposite to say about Donald Trump.
Well, he's saying differently. What did he say about Donald Trump? Because in that clip, he's arguing that he also thinks that Trump shouldn't have to...
Well, yeah, he's saying that now because it'll be like the pot calling the kettle black.
He's saying that he said that then. He's saying
but that is not what he said. I've seen Dick Durbin on Meet the Press and a host of other places saying it's crazy that this guy may become the nominee of a major party again. I mean, that's been a consistent talking point for many Democrats.
But isn't that different, saying that a person shouldn't run versus saying if someone should be impeached or kicked out of office or forced to resign because of various allegations against them? Aren't those different? So, for example, I would say, maybe I agree that he shouldn't be pressured to resign until some charges are proven. Sure. But the idea of running for re-election seems to be in poor taste. Is that an analogy?
I mean, sure, but this is what I'll say, though, about Menendez, Bree. The last time this happened, about 10 years ago, Menendez went on to win re-election by 12 points, Bree.
New Jersey.
12 points. And so I think Menendez is like, look, catch me if you can. I mean, he said, this is crazy to me. He said the emergency cash was money I took out. I made over 30 years ago. My family in Cuba, which, I mean, Bree, it's hard to kind of say something against that. But what about the gold bars, man?
That's what's so funny about this. I mean, it's not funny. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like a cartoon burglar version of criminality. Like you expect him to see him in a picture in like a striped black and white outfit with like a bag with $1 on it.
I mean, it's like Bob Chapo, as I think I heard one person say on Sirius XM POTUS channel yesterday. I mean, this is an unbelievable story, but I will say this. Menendez deserves his right in court.
Sure.
I think as several defense attorneys have made this argument on various other networks, including on News Nation a few days ago, that the Bob McDonald Supreme Court case could be in Menendez's favor in terms of him acting appropriately within the confines of his position as a U.S. Senator, telling the Department of Agriculture, this is what I want. That's not unusual. Telling the White House, you should appoint this particular attorney over one you're already considering. That's not necessarily unusual. The government's going to have to prove its case that he did those things for the cash, the gold bars, the Mercedes-Benz, the mortgage payments. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, so let's just run through, for people who missed the coverage of this last week, what the indictment actually alleges. The indictment claims the couple had an improper relationship with 3 New Jersey businessmen who allegedly paid the couple in exchange for Menendez to use his influence in Washington, D.C. to their benefit. The couple faced 3 criminal counts each: conspiracy to commit bribery, conspiracy to commit honest services fraud, and conspiracy to commit extortion under color of official right. The indictment also charges the senator with providing sensitive U.S. government information that took steps that secretly aided the government of Egypt.
Yeah. I mean, that I got to say, for our audience, this is really interesting to me. I don't know how familiar you guys are with Egyptian-U.S. relations, but if you aren't, Bree, the United States, we've sold hundreds of millions of dollars of arms to the Egyptian government. So it's really interesting to me that the D-N.J is saying that Menendez acted inappropriately in Egypt's interests over the United States' interests, when the U.S. does indeed have a relationship with Egypt, at least in terms of military arms sales.
Well, sure. I mean, I think the argument is that part of why the U.S. has had this relationship with Egypt, the reason it sold so many arms to Egypt was because of Menendez's influence. So that, I mean, those things are going together. So
Menendez alone.
So the New York Times ran this piece just an hour or so ago, so I haven't had a chance to read it. But the title of it is, "For Egypt, Menendez was key to access to billions in U.S. aid. When the annual allotment of up to $1.3 billion faltered even a sliver, Egypt found an ally in Senator Robert J. Menendez, who on Friday was indicted on these bribery charges."
Yeah, and could it not? And look, I'm not arguing for or against Menendez, but I just want to play a devil's advocate here, Bree. Could one not argue that Menendez thought that Egypt was a place in northern Africa that needed support from the United States, and wanted to advocate for Egypt to have that financial and military support against its surrounding adversaries, any more than one is currently making that argument about the Ukraine? I mean, Ukraine, I don't really see much of a difference here.
I think the difference, Shermichael, is that instead of just advocating for it out of the goodness of his heart, or because he thinks that's what American foreign policy should be, he did it in exchange for a collection of gold bars and dollar bills, like, stuffed into the lining of his plate. I'm sorry, I don't know where the dollar bills were stuffed exactly, but they were hidden.
They were in some of the jackets. They're photos. Yes, there are photos.
All right. Okay. I didn't want to smear the good Senator Menendez. But yeah, that's the issue. It's the pay-for-play scheme. If you are willing to do something because it's in the best interest of the nation, then why is it that you're collecting a Mercedes-Benz, gold bars, and wads of cash, seemingly in a quid pro quo scheme?
Allegedly, yeah. And look, I will say, look, guys, we're sort of laughing about this because it is a fun topic to discuss. But I do think, Bree, for the average American who's watching this story, they say this is Washington as normal.
Yes.
The D.C. insiders, politicians, lobbyists, they're taking money from their wealthy friends to do what's in their personal interest versus the interest of the country. And I will also add that I think, and part of the reason why Menendez may not have to resign is because voters have become numb to this.
Yeah, I do think that's true.
They've become numb, like, you know what, I don't particularly care. The voters of New Jersey appear to like Menendez. His approval ratings that I was able to find from a couple years past were really, really high. There's a strong Latino population in certain parts of northern Jersey. And so I think he not only will maintain his current position, Bri, I think the guy could get reelected again.
Yeah, it was interesting to see. It looked like AOC was responding to a question specifically about how ethnicity plays into this.
Which he played into.
And she, to her credit, is like, yeah, sure, Latinos face various issues, and there can be a kind of coded bias about the criminality of Latinos, but I don't think that's what's going on here.
But
this just looks like
that's what he's
a criminal
doing.
thing.
But I will say, from a messaging perspective, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, I think it's smart for Menendez to hunker hard and then pivot to his community for support. I'm a Latino. Why are they really coming after me? And he sort of sends those interesting messages. Well, other people who don't look like us are doing similar things. They aren't going after them. You look at all the people who were behind him, all members of the community. I mean, what are your thoughts on the optics and messaging of that?
I think the optics of gold bars and dollars stuffed in various places around your home are going to prevail. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, obviously, in New Jersey, but I think that's kind of exploiting your identity.
But you get the pivoting, though, of what he's doing?
Oh, no, I get what he's doing. The question is whether voters are going to see through it. I think that that's kind of slimy and manipulative in a way to exploit the real issues that Latinos are facing, the most uninsured ethnic group in the country, for instance, to be used to shield and protect someone who allegedly, who there is a great deal of evidence to suggest committed a crime.
Bob says, catch me if you can.
All right. We're rising right after this.